The next president is likely to face the real scenario of the first shot in a cyber war. One potential target, the grid. And some say that attack has already begun. Full Measure correspondent Lisa Fletcher has our story.
This is the nation's electrical grid. 55,000 substations pushing power to 200,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines, lighting up 125 million homes across the country. Cybersecurity experts call it a target waiting to be hit.
One hacker that's adequately skilled can cause infinitely more damage than a bomb.
John Miller is the chief research officer for the cybersecurity company Cylance. He used to get paid to hack critical infrastructure like banks and nuclear power plants to find the vulnerabilities before the bad guys did.
I mean, somebody actually coming in and causing kinetic damage to a power plant or a pipeline or the transportation industry will create a ripple of destruction.
Miller says an intentional outage by an enemy state or rogue hacker is not an implausible scenario. On December 23, 2015, hackers took down the power for nearly 250,000 people in Ukraine, an unprecedented move that's been widely blamed on Russia.
Let's talk a little bit about the hack in the Ukraine.
Okay.
You know, your suspicions about why that was done, who did it, and if that was a precursor to something larger.
For all intents and purposes, it was the Russians. It's pretty commonly recognized that it was a proof of concept, right? We can talk about, you know, hacking substations and taking down power. The only way you know if it's going to work for reals is if you do it.
When you look at what happened in the Ukraine in, December of last year, everything that happened there could happen here.
Joe Weiss is an expert on the automated systems that control everything from dams to substations. He spent his career studying how the electric grid works.
Look, you got the transformer, you got the relay house. You know, this is typical. You have
Weiss says substations like this one are all over the country, and they are more vulnerable to hacks than the utilities care to let on. That's because Weiss and other experts say nations like China and Russia have already infected the U.S. power grid with the very same destructive malware that's in Ukraine. And while it hasn't been triggered, as of now, there is no way to remove it.
What does that mean that black energy malware is in our grids? What does that mean to the average American?
What it basically is a way of mapping what you have. So what it's saying is, whoever put it there knows precisely what is in our grids.
Michael Rogers, who runs both the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command, raised the same concerns.
It is only a matter of the when, not the if, you are going to see a nation state, a group or actor engage in destructive behavior against critical infrastructure in the United States.
Are the government and the utility companies prepared for the kind of outage that you're talking about?
I don't believe so. And the reason is that it could be very widespread and it can be very long.
As long as 9 to 18 months, Weiss says.
What does that look like?
I guess what it would look like is going back to the 1850s.
But the Utility Industries Trade Association, the Edison Electric Institute, has minimized the threat of a cyber hack. Executive Director Scott Aronson was in front of the Senate Homeland Security Committee in May.
There are a lot of threats to the grid, and we like to say from squirrels to nation states. And frankly, there have been more blackouts as a result of squirrels than there have nation states.
Jerry Cawley, head of the industry's regulatory association, testified in April that an outage would be minimal and that the industry is ready for it.
In the unlikely event of a successful cyber or physical attack, I believe that we are well prepared.
It's ludicrous for the power industry to maintain that they have secured the power grid. The Russians are already inside it, and the Chinese are already inside it.
Ted Kopel is the author of Lights Out, a new book that spells out the risk and how unprepared the government is to deal with it.
So since the book's come out, you've been the brunt of a lot of pushback from your critics. A lot of them have said the dangers that you raise in the book are overblown. Why would they say that?
Well, that's what critics do. It all depends on who the critics are. I don't think you'll find that there were many critics in the intelligence community. I don't think you'll find there are many critics in the military community. The critics tend to come from the electric power industry and from their organizations, and of course they're going to criticize it. They don't want the American public to believe that the power grid is in danger, so it makes sense that they would argue that I'm wrong and they're right.
Some experts in the industry have said, no need to worry, security is better, we've got our arms around this. Do we? Do we have our arms around this?
No. No, I think it's pretty obvious that we don't.
Why do you think there isn't more of a sense of urgency to fix these systems?
People don't have the answers on how to do it, right? That's really what it comes down to. It's not that these people have vulnerabilities and are just neglecting taking care of them. The entire system essentially needs to get re-architected, rebuilt, and replaced.
Something that can't happen overnight, making Kopel and others wonder, where's the government's sense of urgency?
What should be happening now that's not happening?
What should be happening is that we should be preparing for the consequences of a devastating cyber attack.
Cheryl, we reached out to the electric utility companies for a response, and they said something very interesting. They said, unlike other countries, we've got tremendous variability among the 3,000 plus electric utilities here in the U.S., and they say that, in essence, makes it much more difficult to take down the grid at once.
Sounds like the inconsistencies might work to our advantage in that case.
Could be.
Thanks, Lisa.